Hello and welcome back to First Post Live, where we bring you the day's top stories from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the First Post studios. Let's begin with the headlines. Brent crude has again risen, now over $95 a barrel, as shipping in both the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea comes under pressure. Strikes between the US and Iran also continue as the region faces the prospect of an expanded conflict once again. The top diplomats from the United States and Russia have discussed the war in Ukraine on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers Summit in Manila. Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov made no statement to the press after their discussion. The Brazilian government has announced more than $3.6 billion worth of credit for companies hit by new US tariffs, which came into effect on Wednesday. The US announced 25% duties on a wide range of products, citing what they called unfair trade practices. A modelling scout with ties to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has been found dead on the outskirts of Paris. Daniel Siad's name appeared almost 2,000 times in the Epstein files, while an autopsy has been ordered by officials. And for the first time, artificial intelligence has scored full marks in one of the world's most prestigious maths contests. Two Chinese tech companies say their models achieved defeats at this month's International Mathematical Olympiad. After forcing oil tankers to turn back, Iran-backed Houthi rebels have now targeted oil shipping in the Red Sea. The attack comes as the United States continues fresh strikes on Iran. Houthi rebels claimed Thursday that they attacked two Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea using drones and missiles.
The Yemeni armed forces carried out a qualitative military operation targeting two Saudi oil tankers that violated the blockade imposed by the armed forces in the Red Sea. One tanker was named in Celia, and the other is Layla. And the operation was carried out by a number of ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as drones. The strikes were precise, thanks to Allah's grace and assistance, and resulted in a large fire broke out on both vessels.
While Saudi Arabia confirmed that the tanker Celia was struck while sailing in the Red Sea, resulting in a fire that erupted on the vessel's bow. British maritime monitors say that the attack occurred about 130 kilometres from the Saudi coast. Saudi officials describe the incident as a violation of international law, but report that all crew members are safe. The attack on the second tanker has not yet been independently confirmed. But this escalation followed the Houthis' announcement of a naval blockade on Saudi shipping. The group warned shipping companies to stay away from Saudi ports. It said any ship linked to those ports could be targeted, no matter where it was located. The rebel group claimed its campaign was already disrupting shipping in the Red Sea. Ships have already started taking longer routes. Instead of continuing towards Asia, they have turned back towards the Suez Canal.
In the same context, the Yemeni armed forces forced approximately 10 ships to retreat and return.
And at the centre of this disruption is the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, a key shipping route linked to the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. But most importantly, is the Bab el-Mandeb becoming the next Strait of Hormuz? Well, that question is now gaining urgency because the Houthis are backed by Iran, which is locked in a 5-month war with the United States. And they control much of northern Yemen. Now, Iran-backed rebels are opening a new front by targeting Saudi shipping along another of the world's most strategic oil routes. The Houthi threat had already drawn a response from Washington. A day earlier, US President Donald Trump warned the group against disrupting commercial shipping in the Red Sea.
What is your level of concern of a blockade of the Red Sea by the Houthi rebels, opening up another front in the war?
We'll see what happens. So far, it hasn't happened. It might happen. But we take care of things. If something like that happens, we take care of it. You know, we've done that with the Houthis before, and we haven't heard from them in a while since we did what we did originally.
And this marks another sharp turn in a conflict that had remained relatively calm for years. A UN-brokered truce in 2022 largely halted direct cross-border fighting between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis. But that fragile calm began to unravel after strikes hit Sana'a International Airport earlier this month. The Houthis accused Saudi Arabia of being behind the attack, and they declared the period of de-escalation over, while vowing retaliation. Well, from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea, the choke points of global commerce are now battlegrounds. Each day brings new threats, new attacks, new disruptions, and with peace negotiations in ruins, there is no clear path back to normalcy. Staying in West Asia, tankers are under attack in the Gulf. US strikes on Iran are continuing, and Tehran is now issuing some of its strongest threats yet. Iran's Revolutionary Guards reported on Thursday that they halted 3 oil tankers attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz. According to the IRGC, one vessel caught fire and exploded after navigating a southern route off Oman's coast, prompting the 2 other ships to reverse course immediately.
The powerful IRGC Navy emphasizes that the Strait of Hormuz is under our control, and any ship that is deceived by the U.S. and intends to pass without coordination with the Islamic Republic of Iran will suffer the same fate.
Meanwhile, on the ground, the conflict has continued to spill into Kuwait. The country's military said its air defense systems intercepted hostile drones early on Thursday, and the incident followed several days of Iranian strikes on the country. The army said any explosions heard overnight were the result of its air defense systems intercepting these drones. The conflict took a more ominous turn, though, when Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps reportedly warned of national mourning in America. The language has been widely interpreted as a direct reference to the September 11 attacks. That was the last time the United States declared national mourning following an attack on American soil. On the other hand, the United States has continued its military campaign. Central Command said American forces carried out strikes on Iranian military targets for a 12th consecutive night. Iranian state media reported missile attacks in the southwestern cities of the country. Authorities also reported an attack in Bushehr province along Iran's Gulf coast. The war of words has also intensified on both sides. This is what the US president had to say.
Anytime the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, whether by missile, rocket, drone, or any other weapon, the United States will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant.
Well, Donald Trump made one thing clear. He said he was not finished with Iran. Later, he also told supporters that the United States does not need the Strait of Hormuz for its own oil supplies. But he insisted Iran was under growing pressure.
This is with this skirmish we have with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I call it that because, let me tell you, they're getting hit so hard, and they want to make a deal. But I say they're not ready to make a deal, because every time they make a deal, they want to change it and everything. They're not ready. They'll be ready very soon.
Well, Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, responded with an ultimatum of his own. He warned that if Trump carried out his threats, no infrastructure in the region would be safe. Ghalibaf said if Iran cannot sell oil through the strait, neither will anyone else. He added that the situation has fundamentally changed and said there would be no return to pre-war conditions. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi echoed that same message.
Our defense doctrine is clear: eye for an eye. Any aggression against Iran, including our infrastructure, will compel a powerful and decisive response. Those who contribute to such aggression, whatever the kind of support, will also be considered as legitimate targets.
So the cycle of escalation shows no signs of ending. As the US and Iran dig in, the path to diplomacy seems to be narrowing. President Donald Trump was present as the US received the bodies of 4 American service members killed in the Iran war. The human cost of the US war with Iran is continuing to grow. Donald Trump has attended a solemn military ceremony at Dover Air Force Base, where American service members killed in West Asia were brought home in flag-draped caskets. The ceremony, known as a dignified transfer, is one of the most somber traditions in the US military. As the caskets were carried off the aircraft by military honor guards, President Trump stood at attention and saluted. The families of the fallen watched as their loved ones were received with full military honours.
To honor our heroes, and they are indeed great heroes, actually. They said, and all of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon. So we're going to honor them. And one of the hardest things to do, for me, it's one of the hardest things to do as a president, but has to be done.
The president also gave a message to the families of the fallen soldiers.
All I'm going to say is we love you, we love your child, and that's what they are to them. They're their children. There's no games, no nothing. That's their child. And all you can do is throw out your heart.
The 4 service members lost their lives in 2 separate incidents linked to this conflict. 3 of them were killed after an Iranian missile struck a US base in Jordan, hitting their sleeping quarters. They were identified as First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, Sergeant Angel S. Rampasad, and Private Isabella Gonzalez. All 3 were serving with the US Army's air defense units. The 4th service member, Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, died in Iraq during a controlled detonation of a downed attack drone. Their deaths have reportedly pushed the number of US military personnel killed during the Iran conflict now to 18. The Pentagon says that around 100 US troops have also been injured since the latest phase of the conflict began in July, adding that most have returned to duty. However, a US official told Reuters that the number of wounded across the broader conflict is now well above 500. As the war continues, the political pressure in Washington is also intensifying. A heated exchange erupted during a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing between Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu and US Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz. Lieu accused Waltz of failing to provide accurate information about the number of American troops wounded in the war.
You don't even know how many U.S. troops were wounded in this Iran war. Shame on you for not even know basic facts. You are the U.S. ambassador, and you don't even know how many U.S. troops were wounded in the Iran war. You got that wrong. You should be shameful. You don't know basic facts. You should resign. You don't even care about the number of U.S. troops that were wounded.
While the exchange quickly grew tense, Republican lawmakers defended Waltz, saying the criticism had become too personal, while urging that the debate remain civil.
In your opening statement, you bragged about doing a Security Council resolution on Iran. So yes, Iran is in your job responsibility. Focus on it and focus on the troops that have been wounded and killed. Do not be so callous with the safety and lives of American troops. I'm going to ask you again, are U.S. troops currently stationed? Are U.S. troops currently stationed in Jordan? Are U.S. troops currently stationed in Jordan?
Well, the ongoing conflict has also carried a heavy financial cost. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has said the conflict has already cost the United States more than $37 billion. The Pentagon has also requested an additional $67 billion to replenish weapons stockpiles used during the conflict and to fund other defence priorities. When the conflict first escalated, Donald Trump had indicated that military action would be short-lived. But months later, the fighting continues. The casualty list is growing and there is still no clear end in sight. Did Vladimir Putin secretly help Iran target CIA bases during the West Asia war? That is the question now confronting US intelligence. Investigators are examining whether Moscow provided drone technology, targeting data or intelligence that made Iran's strikes more accurate. The investigation is still underway, and according to reports, US officials have not yet reached a final conclusion on whether Moscow directly helped Iran carry out these attacks. But analysts are focused on one key question. Were the drone strikes entirely Iranian, or did Russian support make them far more effective? The suspicion stems from Russia's expanding military ties with Tehran. US intelligence is examining whether drone technology, battlefield expertise or intelligence support from Moscow played a role. Earlier reports said US officials believe Russia had assisted Iran in strikes against American targets in the Gulf, including targeting CIA headquarters and facilities. Russia has strongly rejected the allegation. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed the claim as untrue.
For no apparent reason, the West, and Washington in particular, are now stoking a narrative that Russia and China are directly supplying Iran with the weapons to attack U.S. targets. Well, you know, it is embarrassing to even hear that.
Well, Lavrov also accused unnamed countries of fueling the conflict to prolong the fighting. He insisted Russia is not one of them. The probe follows a series of drone attacks on CIA-linked sites. According to reports, at least 2 CIA-linked sites were struck by Iranian drones in March. One was a CIA station inside the US Embassy compound in Riyadh. Another was in eastern Iraq. Some sources say additional CIA facilities may also have been hit. However, details remain classified because of the sensitive nature of these sites. A US intelligence memo has also raised questions over a possible Russian role. Officials familiar with the assessment say it suggested Russia likely helped Iran target CIA facilities. The concerns grew further over this weekend. Iran struck a US airbase in Jordan with ballistic missiles, killing American soldiers. The attack has intensified scrutiny of possible Russian support. Even so, some intelligence sources have urged caution. They believe Iran may have targeted the wider US embassy complex with the CIA facility struck by chance. The focus has also turned to the technology behind these strikes. Reports claim that Russia may have upgraded Iran's Shahed 136 drones with a modern satellite navigation system. According to those assessments, one drone hit a weak point in the embassy's outer structure, and a second drone then entered and exploded. No deaths or injuries were reported, though. Experts added that the technology makes the drones more accurate and harder to disrupt.
Deeper Russian involvement would not be surprising. They share an interest in trying to reduce or eliminate U.S. influence altogether in their self-designated spheres of influence.
For now, the evidence remains under review with no final outcome. But if US intelligence confirms Russian involvement, the consequences could extend far beyond the battlefield. It would deepen tensions between Washington and Moscow. From the war in West Asia, we now move to the war in Europe. Russia's Amazon equivalent brand is under fire. After months of hitting oil depots and refineries, Ukraine has shifted its sights to one of Russia's biggest civilian businesses. Drone strikes have ripped through warehouses belonging to Wildberries, which is the country's largest online retailer. Well, a trail of destruction was left after a fierce drone strike. Within moments, the warehouse was engulfed in flames. The fire then raced through the sprawling complex, leading parts of the roof to collapse as firefighters struggled to contain the inferno. Ukraine says the target was no accident. President Volodymyr Zelensky accused the company of supporting the Russian military.
There was a successful strike with Ukraine's long-range sanctions on important targets in the Krasnodar and Stavropol regions. Logistics centers involved in supplying the Russian army with components for drones, navigation equipment and gear, as well as a strike on yet another oil depot.
The Kremlin, however, has rejected these allegations. It insists the company does not handle military supplies. Now, this is the second strike on Wildberries in just 4 days. Earlier, Ukrainian drones hit another company site outside of Moscow. That attack sparked huge fires and left 8 people dead. Now, the focus has shifted south. The latest blaze has hit one of Russia's busiest logistics hubs. Wildberries is often called Russia's Amazon. Millions rely on it every day. From clothing and medicine to home appliances and cosmetics, it delivers almost everything. Together with rival Ozon, the company accounts for goods and services worth around 8.5% of Russia's economy. The sector supports nearly 4 million jobs, so any disruption here could ripple across businesses and households alike.
We order household goods, and we really like ordering household cleaning products because they are of very good quality. Other than that, it's mostly small items, all sorts of women's things, such as clothing. We go to Wildberries every day. Deliveries come every day. it has not affected us.
I'm always ordering some household items: toilet paper, napkins, liquid soap, everything for the household, wipers to clean windows, everything like that.
Now, authorities say the latest strikes have also turned deadly. The Krasnodar governor says one person was killed, but it is still unclear whether the victim died at the company's warehouse or elsewhere during the attacks, because Wildberry's CEO says staff were evacuated in time.
The company's logistics centers in the southern cities of Krasnodar and Novinominsk were attacked and evacuated. There are no words that can describe the feelings and emotions because of attacks on ordinary people, our employees.
For Ukraine, this is part of a wider strategy. Kyiv says companies supporting Russia's military are now legitimate targets, with a goal to take the war beyond the battlefield, disrupt supply chains, increase pressure inside Russia, and force Moscow towards diplomacy. But the war is hitting both sides. Russian drones struck 2 petrol stations in Ukraine's northeastern city of Kharkiv. Fuel tanks burst into flames, infrastructure was damaged. Fragments of a drone were seen scattered across one of the sites. More than 4 years into the war, there is still no ceasefire. President Vladimir Putin says Russia's economy remains stable despite the pressure.
I want to stress it once again. The difficulties that are being created on the fuel market are unquestionably temporary and will not affect the general economic dynamics in Russia.
And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during the ASEAN summit in the Philippines to discuss the ongoing war. As Ukraine presses ahead under its new military leadership, the battlefield is no longer confined to the front lines. Warehouses, fuel depots and supply networks are all becoming fresh targets. And to our final report. Good grammar may not win elections, but apparently it certainly can lose you the internet. Britain's new Education Secretary Lucy Powell has barely settled into her new office, and she is already facing a political test. Not over a new education policy, not even over exam reforms, but over a grammar mistake in a social media post. And her opponents didn't miss the chance. The Conservative Party graded her post like a schoolteacher marking homework, giving her just 3 out of 10, before writing the now viral comments, "See me after class." The irony is hard to miss. The person now responsible for the country's education system found herself getting a lesson in grammar from the opposition. The controversy began just the day after Lucy Powell was appointed as the UK's new Education Secretary. She said a social media post highlighting Labour's priorities for schools, skills and education. But instead of the policy announcement making headlines, people spotted several grammatical errors in her post. The Conservative Party quickly turned the mistake into a political moment. They then shared a screenshot of Lucy Powell's post, edited to look like a school assignment. They marked her grammar mistakes in red and mocked her with the comments, "Labour's new Education Secretary is off to a flying start." The jibe quickly went viral, with opponents using the error to question the credibility of the UK's new education chief. For Conservative politicians, the argument was simple. If someone is responsible for improving education standards, they should also be able to produce error-free public communication. But Labour wasn't about to let the attack go unanswered. The party responded by pointing out that the Conservatives had made their own spelling mistakes in their post.
They spelled Labour's in Britain incorrectly. The Tories might want to learn how to spell our country correctly before they start embarrassing themselves.
So what started as a grammar correction quickly turned into a spelling competition between Britain's 2 largest political parties. However, the original post was later corrected. But for Lucy Powell, this is not how she would have wanted to begin her tenure as Education Secretary. She now leads a department responsible for schools, teachers, students and education reforms across England. Yet her first major headlines have been about punctuation and grammar rather than education policy. Now, Powell was appointed following Prime Minister Andy Burnham's first cabinet reshuffle. But the story does not end with a viral typo. It also puts the spotlight on Prime Minister Burnham, who only recently took office and wasted little time in reshuffling his cabinet. Lucy Powell was one of his first high-profile appointments, tasked with leading Labour's education agenda and delivering on promises to improve schools, skills and opportunities for young people.
We need to every day think, well, what can we do just to take that little bit of pressure off people's shoulders, just to give them that little extra sense that help is coming, so that they can have that bit of hope that things are getting better. And that's the mission that we've got to set ourselves together. And later in the discussion, I think it would be great to hear from all of you in terms of what your department can do around cost of living, because there are things that can be done, big and small, and it would be just really good to have that discussion. We need to be a cost of living government.
But this episode also shows how rigorous the UK's politics is. Every post, every word, every comma and every full stop can be scrutinised within just minutes. For Andy Burnham, the real challenge is now to ensure his government is remembered for its reforms and not for its autocorrect moments. Well, that's all we have on the programme for now. We'll see you again at 3 p.m. Until then, thanks for watching First Post Live.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on First Post.